My name is Ed Sachs, and I'm the chair of the Foothill Eastern Toll Road Authority. And we're excited to have you here at our third meeting, a public meeting about mobility necessary in South County. Currently, we are working on a couple of big projects. One is the 241 State Road 91 connector, so we don't have to get off of the 241 there and then merge over through 6 or 7 lanes to get into the connector. And of course, we're working currently on the mobility questions we have here in South County. And so for many of you, you've been here to a couple of our meetings and we've enjoyed your input, and we've taken all of your input and used it in putting together our programs. And for many of you, this is the first time you've attended one of these meetings, and we're happy to have you here. One of the things that we want to get out of this is the participation and understanding. There is no one answer and one solution that's ready right now. We're still in the stage of trying to discover and understand what the mobility needs are. So we hope that you participate. We want to listen to all of you. All of your questions will be answered either live or online if we don't have a chance to get to them. So it's my pleasure to bring Jennifer Fitzgerald up to help us get moving OC.
Thanks, Ed, very much. And it is my pleasure to be with you again at our third public forum. Many of you who have attended the past 2 forums know that I've facilitated each of these forums for TCA, and I'm glad to do it again, and I'm glad to see all of you here tonight. Believe me, I know how hard it is to get to something like this on a weeknight when you're shuttling kids back and forth to baseball and soccer and drama, and we really appreciate the overwhelming response that we've had by you who want to be involved in this process. So my job tonight is to just walk you through the format of this forum and to also talk about the process that TCA has been going through. So tonight, as you know from your agendas, we have 2 panel discussions. The first one dealing with the environmental lawsuit settlement between TCA and the environmental organizations, and the second one dealing with Orange County Transportation Agency's their planning roles and what happens to these 18 ideas that have been submitted so far. So I know that there's a lot of passion in this room, and a lot of people feel strongly about some of the ideas that have been submitted. And my only ask of you tonight is that we show everybody the same amount of respect as we want to be seen, and have a really productive time together tonight. I want to let you know that in between each panel discussion, we'll have question and answer time. You all got question cards when you came in. If you didn't get them or you need more, raise your hand, because you'll see on the sides we've got some folks who will collect cards from you and give you more. So if you need more cards, please ask them and they can give you more cards. And then as you write your question out, feel free to pass them to the aisle so that during the panel, this first panel, they can collect them. The questions we'll deal with, with the first panel are obviously going to be about the environmental lawsuit settlement. And after question and answer starts on each panel, of course, we'll continue to collect cards. At this point, I want to welcome those who are joining us in SM 313 and also online. Of course, for those of you who are joining us online, you didn't get question cards when you walked in tonight. But on the getmovingoc.com website, there's a place for you to comment. And those comments are also going to be turned into our forum facilitator, Dr. Todd Burnett, so that your questions can be answered as well. Now, we've arranged it this way so that we can address as many questions as possible in our limited amount of time. But of course, I know you have a lot of questions, and we're not going to be able to get to all of them tonight. However, every question that isn't addressed tonight will subsequently be posted and answered on the getmovingoc.com website. Now, I know from the pre-forum survey that a lot of you filled out online when you made your reservation that many of you didn't attend either Public Forum 1 or 2. So I thought it was a good idea to go back and kind of bring you up to date on the process that TCA has been involved in. Back in 2015, TCA decided to take a different approach towards seeing if they could be part of the traffic congestion relief problem in South Orange County. And to that end, they commissioned a community ascertainment study that really, through its qualitative research, developed the framework for our process. It showed us some values that you as South Orange County residents have. You value transparency and openness. You value collaboration among the transportation agencies. You want to make sure that all the different transportation agencies aren't working in silos, but are working in collaboration with one another. And you want your elected officials here in South Orange County to be involved in the process. And so that framework has really guided the public outreach and the stakeholder engagement process that TCA has now been involved with for the past year and a half. There are two main elements of this public outreach and stakeholder engagement process. The first is the South Orange County Mobility Working Group. And that is a working group that is made up of local elected officials from South Orange County who also serve in a leadership role at either the Orange County Transportation Authority or on the TCA. And they met 7 times last year, and they accomplished 3 really important things. The first thing they accomplished was they collectively came to agreement on a definition for the traffic problem in South Orange County. And the definition they collaborated on was this, that a traffic congestion problem exists in South Orange County, and it's a north-south problem that is most easily seen on the I-5 during peak times during the week, and also on weekends and when there's an incident on the I-5. And that problem also impacts local arterial roads, and it's getting worse as more development is being built. The second important thing that they accomplished was they collaborated on ideas that they thought could contribute to relieving traffic congestion. And their ideas are incorporated into the 18 ideas that you've all seen before us today. The third important thing they accomplished was they were our sounding board on agendas for these public forums. And speaking of the public forums, that is the other main element of this public outreach effort. Back in June last year, we hosted our first public forum, during which time 100 people came in person to attend and 100 people online participated. During that forum, we presented information about the changing demographics of South Orange County. We presented what transportation projects are already in the pipeline in South Orange County. And then we showed traffic modeling that showed what traffic would look like in 2035 if all of the projects currently on the books are built. And then we asked all the participants to gather in smaller groups and come up with their ideas that they thought might solve traffic congestion. And for those of you who are here on campus with us tonight, all of those comments that were submitted from the first public forum and the corresponding maps are out on display in front of McKinney Theater. For those of you who are online with us tonight, all of those maps and comments are posted on getmovingoc.com. So we took the feedback from the public at that first public forum. We reviewed it all and brought it back to the second public forum, at which time we had 200 people in person participate with us. Online, again, another 100 participated with us. And everyone that participated was able to view, at the time there were 14 ideas, so view those 14 ideas and comment on them. Again, all of those comments and those maps, as well as live streams of both those 2 public forums, are on getmovingoc.com. And then that really brings us here tonight, where we're going to talk about really significant milestones in this process, the first being the environmental lawsuit settlement. And during the second panel, where we talk about next steps and what agency roles are, Valerie McFall, the Chief Environmental Planning Officer of the TCA, we'll go into some detail about the last half of the TCA's process. But at this point, I want to make sure that you see the asterisks on this timeline. And if you look at your agenda and online, if you look at the online agenda, you'll see there are many different asterisks on here, and they all point to one thing: the opportunity for future public engagement. Because that is what we desire in this process. And I know that you feel passionate enough about this to hang in there with us and continue to be engaged. And with that, I want to thank Dr. Todd Burnett, who is the president of Saddleback College. We're in his house tonight. And I would ask you to thank him as he comes out and introduces our first panel.
And Mike. Well, thanks, Jennifer. Hello, neighbors. I'm very glad to be with you here tonight on our campus at Saddleback College. How many people here, this is their first time? Oh, come on. Well, hopefully we have you come back more and more. But we're not here to talk about Saddleback today, even though we're talking about an issue that's important with our community. We're here to talk about traffic congestion relief in Orange County. Saddleback, as you know, is a community of learners, and I know that's what we all want to do tonight: engage and learn from one another. To that end, we have two great panel discussions tonight that should hopefully and really frame our community's discussion moving forward about how to solve our traffic congestion problems. To start us off, I'm joined on stage by three people who were intimately involved in the negotiation to end the decades-long lawsuits between the environmental community and TCA. With us tonight are, in the middle, actually, Mike Crayman, and Mike is the Chief Executive Officer for the Transportation Corridor Agencies. TCA operates a 51-mile toll road network in Orange County, California, providing traffic relief to over 300,000 customers daily. Additionally, TCA manages 2,200 acres of restored open space that was established as mitigation for construction of the toll roads. And to his immediate left is Dr. Dan Silver. He is a physician by training. Dan was born in Los Angeles and attended the University of California at Berkeley and Columbia University College of Physicians and Surgeons. With Endangered Habitat League since its inception in 1991, Dan saw the organization emerge as a regional leader in conservation and growth management. On behalf of EHL, he accepted the 1995 David Gaines Award from the Planning and Conservation League. In 2004, the American Planning Association California chapter honored Dan with its Outstanding Distinguished Leadership Layperson Award. Last and certainly not least, and I bet you can figure out who he is, this is Richard Gatz over on the right. And Richard served in the California State Assembly for 16 years, during which time he negotiated major interstate agreements related to water, energy, and planning. He is the chairman of the Valley Economic Alliance and has served on numerous public and philanthropic boards, including the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, the Los Angeles City Planning Commission, Heal the Bay, and the Saving West Foundation. He is the owner of Richard Katz Consulting, a successful public policy government relations firm. So let's jump right in and talk about what this historic lawsuit settlement means to our region. Mike, what does the lawsuit settlement accomplish? What specifically does the agreement do, and what does it not do?
Well, thank you, Doctor, and thanks everyone for attending and participating tonight. We've been looking forward to this, and we're glad to have the opportunity to share information about what we're doing at TCA. So the environmental lawsuit settled a 15-year dispute that the TCA had related to completion of our toll road network. It settled 5 lawsuits with environmental organizations, the California Attorney General, Native American Heritage Commission, and the State Parks Commission. With that, it defines, and if we could have the slide on the avoidance area, So what it did is it defines an avoidance area where TCA will not fund or construct a transportation project. It also secures non-opposition from the environmental organizations for any TCA project constructed outside of the avoidance areas. The agreement does not identify or commit the TCA to any specific alignment or project. What the agreement does is it allows TCA to move forward with the planning process for mobility improvements, and that is what we've been doing. We had, as Jennifer described, the South County Electeds Working Group, 2 previous public forums, and that process generated 18 ideas through that. We've tried to be inclusive in those ideas and not dismissive. But now is the time to study those ideas and evaluate each one of them. They do not define a TCA plan, but rather they represent a compilation of ideas that have been brought to us through this public process. We need to look at the impacts and costs of these. We need to determine their effectiveness. And we need to get the information we need through our evaluations to be able to answer the public's questions. That's really important to us. At this point, we may not have the right solution. So you'll be glad to hear that certainly no decisions have been made. If through our current efforts we need to modify ideas or look for new ideas, we will. This process will definitely benefit from constructive public input. So I think that's where we're at, and let me turn it back.
Well, thank you, Mike. And you know, folks, let's be respectful so we can answer all the questions afterwards. You all get a chance to bring your questions forward, and if we waste some of our time, we're not able to get to those questions. So let's hear what they all have to say. So Dan, I want to talk to you a little bit. This fight for you and your coalition was about saving biologically and recreationally significant open space. What do you think that means to the region?
Our campaign, and we had about 12 organizations in the Save San Onofre Coalition, was about protecting the most ecologically intact lands that remain in coastal Southern California, as well as irreplaceable recreational resources. And I know many of you in the audience tonight were part of this campaign, and I want to thank you. Specifically, what we were concerned about is the San Mateo Creek watershed, the Don O'Neill Land Conservancy, San Onofre State Beach with its beachside campgrounds, and the Trussell Surf Break. As a result of our agreement, these state and globally important resources are now safe. But to clarify any misunderstanding, our campaign was never about stopping all transportation improvements, nor was it about stopping a toll road per se. It was always about protecting certain things. And while there are resources outside of the avoidance area, both biological and recreational, the avoidance area really captures the crucial ones, the ones that are irreplaceable in our view. So what's the value of this agreement? None of us are going to wake up 10 years from now in the morning and find that the TCA is making another run at things, and we're not going to wake up and find that the state park or Trussell's is under threat. That's in the past.
Great. Well, thank you. Well, Richard, if you could tell us, how did this collaboration actually begin?
Dr. Burnett, thank you. And also, again, it's good to see you again. Thank you for hosting us, and congratulations on a successful career here and the next phase that I know you're going to shortly. It's been wonderful what you've done at Saddleback, and I want to thank you for giving all of us this opportunity this evening.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you again all for being here. It's not It's a Monday night, it's transportation. Most people get bored very quickly with transportation, yet you've taken the time to participate in this public process, and while you may not think we appreciate it, we really do. This started, to be truthful, this collaboration started because I think on both sides, we were tired of paying lawyers. Very simply, whether it's the Save San Onofre Coalition or the TCA, we spent a lot of money on lawyers in the last 15 years. No real disrespect to any lawyers that may be here, but we thought it was time they earned their living somewhere else and not off these issues. So we sat down as groups and the TCA to figure out if there was a way to create a process. I've done this before. I've done it on major transportation legislation. I negotiated the Colorado River Agreement on behalf of the state of California with the federal government, 7 states, and 4 water districts in Southern California. And this process that we use comes out of that experience of trying to put all the parties at a table, trying to get together, not in the press, but where you can have an honest discussion and where Dan Silver could say something like, you know, there are transportation solutions that have to be realized and not get booed out of the room as an environmentalist. And Mike Cramen and folks in the transportation industry could say, you know, there are sensitive habitat areas that ought to be protected and not get run off the stage by their colleagues as well. You have to create an environment where people can work together to create those kinds of solutions or processes. And that's what really came out of this. You know, this is an unprecedented process. We have not come to a conclusion on a solution. That is way down the road. What we did come to a conclusion on is how to create a process that had more public input than any process I've ever been a part of, public process going forward and public process that came up with the 18 ideas that you've heard so far. But as you heard Mike say a couple minutes ago, if it's not the right answer, you know, we don't need an answer just to have an answer. We need to get it right. Congestion is too big a problem, and the wasted time and energy and frustration that we all face when stuck on the road. Listen, I drove down here from LA for this, so you don't have to tell me about congestion in Orange County or Los Angeles. And we need to find real solutions that not only solve mobility problems, but create better communities for us to live and raise our kids and our grandkids. And that's really what the goal of this whole process is, to come up with a solution that solves multiple problems, not one problem at the expense of everything else. The one thing I'd ask you to keep in mind, you know, there are no silver bullets. Everybody hopes that there's a solution to this problem that means Mike's going to have to do something different, but I might not have to. You know, and that way Mike gets out of my way on the freeway. A solution is going to impact on all of us one way or another. Our goal, with your help, is to find the best solution to a really complex and difficult question.
You know, one of the things I want to talk about is in the agreement, there's a $28 million mitigation fund. So Mike, when does the TCA have to invest that money? And what would trigger that expense? And how do you decide where to use that funding?
Sure. So as part of the settlement, TCA committed to a fund of $28 million towards restoration and acquisition of open space with preference to the San Mateo watershed, but also with consideration to the adjacent watersheds like the San Juan Creek watershed. What we're doing is we need to look at immediately how to find those locations and those opportunities. So we established an environmental oversight committee to help us identify and prioritize those. But those types of properties are very rare and diminishing rapidly in Orange County. So we will take action on those to identify, prioritize, and then bring to the TCA board those opportunities to then authorize the expenditures out of that $28 million fund in order to move as quickly as possible in terms of being able to execute some of that while opportunities exist.
Thank you. You know, Dan, some residents in local communities seem frustrated that the old green alignment is now not an option, and that some of the traffic congestion relief ideas they've seen appear to have significant impacts to the built community. How would you respond to that?
Okay, well, let me answer that in a couple ways. Regarding the green alignment, some would say that
Yeah, they can't hear you.
some people would say that irrespective of our agreement, the green alignment is not a viable option simply because of the State Coastal Act. I think what happened in our agreement is that the TCA acknowledged that reality. The option that's on some of these maps that takes La Pata extending into Christianitos would also just grossly violate the Coastal Act. But there's just no question that some of the things that are now on the table in terms of built alternatives, and as you know, there's a whole range of alternatives, built, no build, shared rides, arterials, whatever it is. Some of the things on the table undoubtedly have impacts to communities, to view sheds, to open space, to recreation. And I'll be the first to acknowledge that. But the decisions on whether those impacts occur, whether a toll road is built at all, how those impacts are addressed, that does not rest with the Safe San Onofre Coalition, and it never has. It's obviously rests with elected officials, our collective elected officials on the TCA Board of Directors. And that is the forum for resolving those issues.
Thank you. Mike, it seems like you've jumped from the frying pan into the fire, so to speak. As soon as the lawsuits were settled, various residents and organizations started opposing your new bottoms-up process because they saw ideas they didn't like. Did you think the honeymoon would actually last longer?
Todd, let me ask, while Mike's thinking, give him 5 more minutes on the honeymoon for a second. But let me just add one thing to what Dan was saying there.
Yeah.
I've never seen an agreement before like this where there is land actually designated as avoidance areas where you cannot build, and an agency agrees not to build in the future, not knowing what 10 or 20 years from now may bring. And in this agreement, TCA has said in the avoidance areas, which are clearly marked out on the maps, no TCA authority at any point will ever build a road in those areas. And went one step further. We went to Sacramento also and got the signatures on the agreement of the Secretary of Resources and the Secretary of Transportation, so they acknowledge that agreement and understand that those are areas that we don't want to see anything built in the future. So it's more than just the TCA stamp, it's also the state of California that's saying we're going to honor and respect that commitment to the open space. 5 more minutes. Sorry.
So Todd, you asked me if I felt like I went from the frying pan into the fire and if I thought the honeymoon would last longer. These complex transportation projects, like trying to solve the north-south traffic congestion on the I-5, these are difficult projects that are not solved easily. But throughout my career, when I've worked on difficult projects or difficult problems, what I found is that you need to be inclusive and you need to involve everybody in the discussion. People who support what you're trying to do, people who oppose what you're trying to do. And I can categorically say that in all instances, the solutions and the projects are made better for having that diversity of input and for having the patience to go through the process and the fortitude to involve the people that maybe don't disagree with you. You don't need to fill a room with like-minded people to get to the best solutions. You need to get all viewpoints and consider all of those as you solve the problem. And TCA is committed to this process. Within a reasonable, constructive process, TCA is committed to having that open dialogue, to getting that input, to asking ourselves the tough questions as we move forward to solve a difficult transportation problem, which is never easy, which no silver bullet exists for, that we will all have to work together in order to come up with the most balanced solution.
Mike, speaking of the process and getting input, maybe just real quick, remind all of us again, what are some of the processes that are going to happen over the next few months and year that we will have an ability to provide more input?
Certainly. So where we're at now is at the very beginning of the process. It's called the project initiation phase. So I guess that's sort of self-explanatory. So we've been working on that since December, and in that is where we've started to look at the ideas that were generated through the process in more detail, to put the engineering to it, to put the environmental review to it, to look at it, to see, basically to put meat on the bone of what came to us as basically crayon lines on a map through the public process. So we have to fill that out and get more information. With that, we'll be able to understand the impacts, the costs. We'll be able to get information that will help us answer your questions about each of these. From that process, then it will move, and that could likely take us the rest of the year and beyond in order to get through that process to look at all of those ideas. With that, we'll continue to question those ideas and look for variations of those ideas. We will continue to have public input that would help us maybe even introduce new ideas into that process. Then we'll move more into the legislatively mandated environmental review process. That would start sometime next year. And the first phase of that really is a solid year of technical studies, everything from traffic, noise, visual, biological, cultural, all of those type of studies that are very prescriptive through the Caltrans process in the process that we have to follow for each of those. After which we would go into the development of a draft environmental document. So we're talking, sometime in 2019 or whatever, and that's where we kind of coalesce all of that information and prepare a recommendation to go to the TCA board and to Caltrans as far as the alternative that would, say, emerge out of the process as the one that would be recommended to moving forward. That's also a very significant public review process of those, where all of the questions that the public asks us about the process and about the ideas get answered in detail before we would then move into a final environmental document which would incorporate all of the input that occurs at that. So it is not a short process. It's a process that we're at the very beginning of, and there's a lot of work to be done and a lot of questions to be answered and a lot of studies and technical information to be developed.
Great, thank you. And we'll have more information about that process out to everyone soon. Dan, clearly in fact, I'll say all transportation projects have their challenges and issues. What lessons can our community learn from your experience, the Endangered Habitat Wildlife League, in your experience in negotiating this settlement with TCA?
Okay, well, let me answer that with a couple bits of advice. We fought the TCA for 10, 15 years, really a long time. But at the end of, a couple of years ago, new management came in at the TCA. We found an agency that, somewhat to our surprise, was quite open-minded to new ideas. It was open to our point of view, and they were basically straight shooters. And I think you will find that out for yourselves as this process evolves. You don't have to believe it now, but I think you'll find that. We also found the traffic consultants they hired to be very credible, and I think you'll see an honest analysis of the benefits and the impacts. If you look at the options, it truly is a full range of options. There's everything on the table, from arterials, transit, ride sharing, you name it. So my advice basically is not to sell the public process short, particularly because your communities are represented on the decision-making body. And at the end of the day, there's really basically three ways this process can end from your perspective. One, and you always have saying, at the end of the day, you might say, gee, we're just opposed to this outcome. It's not acceptable. Well, yeah, but, I think you're prejudging the outcome, and I wouldn't go that far yet. We are not. And then at the other end of the spectrum, there might be one of these options that you look at more information and you say, gee, maybe we can work with this, and everybody agrees. So those are like two ends of the spectrum. But the truth is that there's a whole lot of things in the middle. And there's mixing and matching, there's new ideas, there's modifications, there's compensatory measures, there's room for what amounts to a negotiation. in a huge range of things. So I would urge you to be organized like you are, and I would urge you to meet personally with the TCA and work through these options. You know, that's after working with the new regime there, I really urge you to do that. They can't meet with everybody, but if you're organized, that gives a venue for you to have very meaningful discussions. So at this point, there's no downside to participating in good faith in the public process, no downside at all. And I urge you to continue to do that.
Thanks, Dan. You know, Richard, you've been involved in a lot of major infrastructure projects in your time. In this day and age, how do infrastructure projects succeed?
I think they don't succeed unless you have a transparent process, unless you have an open process, unless you start off with having the public involved. And I think one of the reasons that we were able to reach an agreement between the Safe San Onofre Coalition and the TCA was there was a very open, transparent process, and the engineers that were available to the TCA were also available to the coalition. So everyone had input into the data. In fact, in an unprecedented move, and this is, and I agree with Dan, you know, since Mike became CEO and the team he's built around him at the TCA have really strived to be more open than any public agency I'm familiar with. And I've seen a lot of them. But, you know, the whole idea was to agree on the data, and not just on the outputs, but to agree first on what the inputs were. Because it's easy to question the output if you don't have any say in what goes into making, you know, those determinations and to generating that data. They went the extra step on both sides to actually have input into what, not only what would be studied, but how it would be studied and what the inputs were. So when there were outputs, the agreements, you know, there were outputs and people, you could disagree with the final output, but not the technology that got you there. And I think in discussions like this, and I agree with everything Dan said, when I first interviewed with the TCA about working with them, I said, look, if you're going to do the same thing you've done for the last 20 years, you're going to wind up in the same spot. You should save your money, and we're not going to do this. But they were committed to a very open public process, and the whole TCA board, I think, underwent that change when not only hiring Mike, but the board members as well, in wanting to find a solution, because frankly, as we said in the beginning, everyone was tired of fighting, because fighting doesn't solve the problem. The congestion's still there, the air pollution's still there, the headaches are still there, and you're still late for wherever you're going.
Yep.
And under this agreement, the open space will be preserved forever.
All right. Well, folks, I'm sure some of your questions will probably deal with what you're talking about. So we're going to go to your questions right now. And you all received note cards. If you still need to have some questions, feel free. There are people in the aisles you can get the cards from. I have them right here. I have, this is for online questions that have come in. This one is for the people that are on the overflow room over in Science Math 313. And then the blue here, no surprise, most of the questions are from all of you in this theater right now. So we're going to try to get through as many questions as we can. And as you already heard, any question that is not answered tonight, and I think even the questions that are answered tonight, will be answered online. So you'll be able to go and see your question and your fellow neighbors and friends' questions answered too. So I'm just going to randomly pick from these envelopes, and I'm going to start with the most questions here, and just going to grab one. And by the way, folks, if there's a question that's a duplicate or something that I read, I think we'll try to get to another question. So don't feel I'm throwing something away I don't want you to hear about. But the first question here is... and also, I'm going to have to decipher a lot of your handwriting. So it says, SR-74 around Mission Viejo connect to I-5 south. Does, I guess, SR-74 around Rancho Mission Viejo connect to I-5 south of Trestles? Trestles. South of Trestles. Do anybody know what that is?
It would go through the Marine base. South of Trestles.
Next question. I'm sorry, folks, or person. All right, next question here is... Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh, I'm going to turn it over. How's that? If TCA cannot build or fund a road in time, in the environment-sensitive areas, why can't Caltrans build a freeway connecting, thank you, SR 74 around Mission Viejo connecting to I-5 South?
So the settlement agreement, which we're talking about, commits that TCA will not fund or construct a road in the avoidance area that you see here. Also, as Richard pointed out, the State Transportation Agency and the State Department of Natural Resources both signed on to acknowledge this agreement and to use in their roles as those two agencies to enforce the intent of what was agreed to in this agreement.
Great, thank you. I'll take another one out of this one, since I messed up the first one.
It means they can't build.
So the second question,
Caltrans
folks,
also.
are, would the connection of alignment 14 to the I-5 create a traffic choke point in San Clemente? If no, why not? Hey, folks, I think we're here to hear the panelists.
So again, we're early in the process, and while that alignment is one of the 18, number 14, and so that's one of the things we'll have to study. How that would be constructed, what the exact alignment would be, what the configuration would be. Those are all how it would connect to 5. It looks to me like it's an independent roadway connecting so that it would actually take traffic through San Clemente and that would take traffic off of the streets of San Clemente. But those are the type of information and details that will be studied. So that's exactly the type of question and the analysis that we're doing in this project initiation phase to be able to come up with information that will allow us to answer that question.
Great. And I would emphasize again what Dan had said earlier, folks. Please, the most effective way is to work with TCA directly. Individually, all of you, try to get your information, your comments to them in forms such as this. So
Todd,
please do so.
Todd, one thing to add,
Yeah,
in
sure.
the CEQA process, which is mandated by law,
Right.
prohibits a conclusion being made or a process that directs to a conclusion is prohibited by law. And also by law, you have to study any alternative that is possible there. So while some of these answers may be obvious to you, the law still mandates the TCA has to study these alternatives, even if they're all rejected, because that's called for in the CEQA process.
Right. And that's just one part of the process we all know is CEQA.
Exactly.
There's also other steps before and after.
And after.
The CEQA.
All public.
All right. Next question is, why is San Clemente expected to have this toll road imposed rather than newer communities such as Ladera? This plan could have and should have been resolved prior to those newer communities being approved to be built. And
So where we're at in the process is what's on the ground is what's on the ground. We're looking forward and we're trying to find solutions, and we've asked for ideas, and we've gotten a lot of ideas which we now have to study in terms of that. Land use planning is a function of the cities and not the TCA, and so we take what's in the plans and we have to work with that in order to find our solutions.
all right. By the way, that was a question from our friends over in the overflow room, SM 313. So we actually have one question from somebody online, so let's give them a shot. It says, what will mobility improvements cost our community?
So it's hard to
Yeah,
put a
that's a hard-
cost on something that we're just starting to study. I think part of I'd say there's an equal question the other way. What does the lack of mobility cost our communities currently and into the future? So both of those questions will get answered through the process. It's important that we understand there's a cost to providing mobility, which we're going to study and identify what those impacts are and come up with a balanced solution. But there's also a cost of not providing mobility in our quality of life and in our economic vitality.
All righty. How can you allow toll roads to be within 500 feet of schools and parks? Is that an answer for Dan? Dan, would you know a little bit about that?
Again, those are impacts that would be identified as the ideas and alignments as we develop those. Then those are something that would be studied in there. Certainly, a lot of the alternatives, air quality is a hugely important aspect of what would be studied for each of those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next question is, hey, you guys. Why do developments build? That's exactly the other question that we just had. I'm sorry, you guys. Let's try to get a different one. Who is more important, people or?
Take a shot. Go on.
I think it's trout. I apologize, and I don't want to disrespect this question. Can you read that and understand that? What's the bottom down there?
Who is more important, people, trout, or gnatcatcher?
Oh, gnatcatcher. Sorry, got it. That's an N.
I guess that's one for me. Yeah. Well, you know, our group is an advocate for nature, and we've taken an awful lot from nature. And Orange County has taken an awful lot. It's pursued, you know, unrelenting sprawl, you know, from the ocean to the mountains. And, you know, in our view, it's time to save what's left of the best natural habitats. So, but I do not foreclose the door that there are built alternatives or non-built alternatives that can protect these important natural areas and be acceptable to communities. We just don't know that answer yet. And so that's the goal.
Okay, thank you. All right, another one from this room. This was not disclosed prior to buying my home. Why not?
So again, we're taking where we're at and we're looking forward to come up with a solution, and that will require looking at and balancing all of the impacts as we move through the process and answering those questions.
Okay.
We answered you 10 years ago when we voted no, we don't want it, and we still don't want it.
That's an option. I mean, not building anything is an option.
One more question from this room was San Juan Capistrano has made a point of keeping ridge lines open as a general plan. How can TCA take over San Juan's cherished open space? Oh, longer question. That San Juan has fought to keep for so many years. Why did San Juan not get a letter letting everyone know you were planning this? Most of my neighbors did not know about a toll road ruining our protected ridge lines.
So again, being where we're at in the process, more and more people.
Shh, hey, you guys, come on. Well,
You know, look, you've all convinced yourselves that there's a solution we're just not telling you about because we already agreed upon it, and we're going at. Listen. Hey, excuse me. I'm listening to the questions, and we're trying to answer as best we could. But in all honesty, you believe, many of you believe certain things in your heart, and I'm not going to argue with you about them and tell you you're wrong because you might be right. All we're trying to do is find out the answers. Now, someone said, why didn't I get a letter when I bought my home? Well, first of all, I don't know when you bought your home. But aside from that, there's nothing to give you a letter about at this point. There are 18 ideas up there that may not be the list at the end of this process. We could give you an idea today, but it doesn't mean it's going to be voted on, enacted, or even make it through the process. That's what Mike and that's what Dan and everyone else has been trying to explain. We are at the beginning, not the end of getting this. So I appreciate strong feelings. I understand politics. I understand people who feel strong. And frankly, I encourage people to feel strongly about it because there are too few people participating in politics these days. And that's what this comes down to at the end of it. And as Dan said, this is a public process. This is an opportunity to hear from people and not only their points of view, but express your points of view and impact on decision makers. But you got to have a dialogue in order for that to happen.
Yeah.
So to answer the question, the city of San Juan Capistrano participated in the South County Electeds Workshop. We had many residents of San Juan Capistrano attend and participate in the first two public forums, and I'm sure we have lots of people from San Juan Capistrano here tonight.
Okay. We're going.
There's cards for your questions.
Ma'am, did you fill out a question? I hope you asked that question because it will be answered. It'll be answered. Folks, there are other people that wrote questions. Let's give them a chance, okay? Thank you. So folks, you three, how many residences and businesses will be condemned if the toll road is built through San Clemente?
There's absolutely no way to have an answer to that question until we're able to go through the process.
Well,
Dan, did you want to say something here?
yeah, I mean, during the process, our groups looked a lot at the Interstate 5 widening alternative, and there were disagreements on how many homes and businesses, mostly businesses, that would be taken by that. But again, this process, I hate to say it again, but that's the exact question that this process is supposed to answer. That's exactly what it's about. And I think the good news is that I'm hopeful that we'll actually get good data and can make fact-based decisions.
And a goal would be absolutely to minimize that. That would be a last resort in any of these alternatives.
I'm going to take another question from our friends up in the other overflow room. And this question is, why can't you connect the toll road south of Basilone Road at the 5 freeway? Because
I think it goes through Camp Pendleton, right?
Yeah.
And that's off the table from the Marines. The Marines have said it's off the table. The Navy said it's off the table, and
All right, we're going to go back to this room. Question from one of you. All righty, how can routes 18 and 9 further TCA's stated mission of the 241 extension to reduce congestion of Interstate 5 in South Orange County?
So routes 18 and 9 are both kind of an east-west alternative that's on there. And it's uncertain how that would affect north-south congestion on the I-5. So we'll have to run that analysis in order to determine if that provides any relief to the problem that we're trying to solve. That was a question that was an alternative. The first one was one that we worked with some of the participants in the South County Mobility Working Group to kind of define that type of connection and then try to figure out how that would work. And then later on, that was actually number 18, so that was the last one that was added. That was kind of a request from the city of San Clemente to consider that east-west. So because we're an inclusive process and we're not looking to shut things out at this point, we added that into the things that we'll look at. But that's a good question, and I don't know the answer to how effective that would be but certainly something that our analysis will shed light on.
Okay, thank you. Another question. That's a long one, folks. While I support this entitlement public input process, I am absolutely opposed to any toll road extensions through San Juan Capistrano or San Clemente. I'm just trying to find the question. I apologize, folks. That's no question. Oh, hey, why don't we get a new one here? How will TCA prioritize the impact to existing homes when reviewing alignment options?
So that each alternative as it gets developed through the process will have very detailed engineering that goes with it, which would have right-of-way impacts identified if there are any to residential homes. Those would be brought to light and identified through the process. We would also look at other things, air quality, noise, visual, all of those impacts as well. And then there's a very, I guess, defined process through the Caltrans process in order to evaluate those and then evaluate those. Once those are completed, those studies are completed and those results are put out and we move further in the process, there will be an opportunity to have questions and comments about that, which would help us also gauge those impacts as we continue to engage the public in that discussion. That will help advise us to that as well. So it's part of major transportation projects that's something that becomes a potential impact that needs to be studied in great detail, identified, shown, get that kind of input back in terms of then how that moves forward in the process.
Okay. I apologize, no question. Folks, we have the panel here to ask questions. And like I said, all these questions are going to be up on the line. They will be answered. You'll be able to see them all. But tonight, let's make use of the panel. Can you explain all donations made and why they were made for what settlement purposes?
So
you kind of already said that?
We basically talked about the 38 million. It's not a donation. It's really a conservation fund that the TCA will.
All righty. Question. This is another 9 and 18 question. 9 and 18 are protected land. The reserve in the southern region habitat preserve any use of this land easements. There's a bunch of numbers here. Number 2, I don't know what that means. Easements, please acknowledge, do you know about this, and that you will remove 9 and 18 from the trust? I don't know.
I'm not sure where.
I don't know if that might be too specific. So you can answer that later, maybe? Yeah. We'll get that question answered. You will get that question answered.
Yeah.
Or do you know what that is, the 2?
I'm not sure where the easements are they're referring to, so.
Yeah, so we would identify any easements, conservation easements or other on any of the alignments, any of those that are affected.
But this will be answered, this question,
We'll get
when they have the specifics, because
specifically
they
that,
obviously
we'll look
knew
at that.
specifically. Okay.
Yeah.
Do any of the panel or board members live in the affected areas? And
So I live in the area of benefit of the toll road system, as do many people.
do any of the board members?
And all of our board members represent cities that fall within the area of benefit of the toll road system.
All right.
0. Yes. What did they donate
How long has option 9 been an option? 5 years, 10 years?
Well, this option 9 came through the South County elected working groups, and it was also an idea that was proposed in planning session number 1. So that would be since January of 2016 it was developed. I don't know the specific date when that was no, I can't have you talk, sorry. But we can't, it was during the process that we're currently in, both the South County elected working group and in the first 2 public workshops where it was introduced.
Okay, great. If you guys have additional follow-up questions, again, the cards are here. So if something is not answered, I encourage you to maybe fill out an additional question. Does that sound good? You got them over here? Everyone? Maybe raise your hands. If you need a card, perfect. Great, there's people over there. All right, next question. How can routes 18 and 9, I think it might be similar, how can routes 18 and 9 further the TCA's stated mission of the 241 extension to reduce congestion of Interstate 5 in South Orange County?
Again, the traffic analysis will show us what impact and effect it does in benefiting that reduction in north-south traffic on the I-5. I don't have an answer till we do that analysis.
Why are you not showing the 14 options for us so we know what you're talking about?
Actually,
Sure, we can go to that slide.
we actually have that slide, and the next panel, we hear you.
Oh, but there's still not a map.
There you go. There's the map. All right, so that helps everybody. That was a good suggestion, by the way.
Now talk about 14 and 9. Where's 9?
All right, not a question again. Okay, folks, I'll keep trying to find questions. Question. Regarding option 14, San Clemente Pico at I-5, as the geological map specific plan, Rancho San Clemente maze land installing and landslide areas on the proposed slopes adjacent to Pico, why would the TCA want to construct a toll road there? There is currently litigation against San Clemente and Caltrans due to the widening project's destabilizing impact on the steps with damage to homes from something in slope grading.
Yeah, for all of us who live and work in South Orange County, we understand the geological challenges that there are, and that's something that there would be a significant amount of field exploration in terms of trying to analyze those impacts and then developing the engineering solutions. That is a lot of detail that as we look at each of these alignments, that will be looked at initially, and then in more depth in the technical study phase that I described. That would be one of the biggest things we need to do, is that subsurface investigation to understand those and the mapping that's been done to date as well.
All right, we only got a few minutes, so let's get through some quick questions. Remember, we have panel 2 coming up too. Option 9 passes right next to 2 schools, and tunneling is an option. How can TCA legally have this pollution so close to schools?
Certainly air quality and other impacts of a roadway are the type of things that we would look at, and you would look at the receptors that are in the vicinity of where these alignments go, whether that be homes, parks, or schools, and those need to and will be evaluated.
And why are they options?
All righty. Could you, and this all 3 of you maybe, could you please explain the benefit for the toll road for the San Clemente resident?
So to characterize the problem that we're trying to solve is north-south congestion on the I-5, which impacts people's mobility both north and south for those using the I-5. So the residents of San Clemente wanting to go north, the people wanting to get to San Clemente. It also has an impact on the arterials that cross I-5, because as the congestion on the road hinders the usage of it, the arterials getting people to and from the I-5 and also those interchanges become overloaded and congested as well. So in order to help relieve that, we're looking at what are the ideas that will help that kind of mobility. So what are people's ideas in order to help improve how they perceive that problem? And that's what we asked for. So that's what we got, was ideas. So part of why we don't have specific answers is because what we did is we went out and we asked the public, and we went through a process where we said, give us your ideas of how they would solve it. Now the ball's in our court to study those, to understand what those impacts are, to understand if they can be modified, or if that brings to light new ideas as we study these, in order to go through that process. That will help us identify those impacts, also identify the benefits. What type of travel time savings would we be able to provide to people who need to get from San Clemente to other destinations? What type of time savings do we have to people who want to come and visit you in San Clemente in terms of getting there? This applies on both the weekends, during the commute hours, and when there's an incident on I-5. And we all see the gridlock that occurs when those situations occur, and then particularly when then people are trying to jump off the I-5 and try to find that secret passage through the town to get around the congestion on the I-5, which then spills over in the communities. So all of those are what is in our mind of how we would like to help improve the situation there. And that's why we ask for the ideas that you would have that would help us be able to look at ways to solve that. Now, we want to have time to be able to analyze those, to be able to do more development of those ideas so that we can identify the impacts that I hear a lot of concern about, but also then to help us move forward in that process to see how we do solve that problem and move forward.
Unfortunately, Sir, can you please write your questions down? I apologize, everybody, but we're out of time. There are a lot of questions up here. They are going to be answered as they were stated before. If your questions is not answered, please bring your question forward to the process that's going to be coming up. These gentlemen, two of them at least, did not have to be here. We thank Richard Katz. We thank Dan Silver and Mike Craven. We really appreciate you coming out here and dealing with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll be back for panel number 2. And again, please, folks, there are cards being passed around. Fill them out.
Go outside and see all the
And
people who couldn't get in the house. People outside.
We're getting settled. We're going to begin our next panel discussion, and these are representatives from the Orange County Transportation Planning Agencies. They're here to discuss the role they play in transportation planning in our region, as well as what will happen from their perspective to the 18 different traffic congestion relief ideas that were submitted over the past year to TCA from the public and local elected officials. So it gives me great pleasure to first introduce Valerie McFall. She's in the middle there. And Valerie is TCA's Chief Environmental Planning Officer. Her responsibilities include managing California's largest public tolling agency's nearly 2,200 acres of open space, including coastal sagebrush, a scrub, wetland and riparian habitat and oak woodlands, identifying and negotiating acquisition of additional open space parcels, and preparing environmental documents per CEQA and NEPA guidelines for the agency's highway improvements and associated capital improvement projects, among other things. That was a mouthful. Also joining us to the right of her is Greg Nord from OCTA. Greg joined OCTA in 2005, where he is now in his 3rd cycle as the project manager for the Long Range Transportation Plan. Greg's position as OCTA requires him to coordinate with agencies from the local level to the federal level on a wide variety of transportation issues. This is exemplified by his 2 terms chairing the Transportation Conformity Working Group, a forum that coordinates all levels of government to meet Southern California's air quality conformity requirements. Additionally, he has served as the vice chair to the Orange County Council of Governments Technical Advisory Committee, which is comprised of planning staff from most of Orange County's local agencies, including Caltrans and TCA. And lastly, over to the right of me, is Lan Zhao, is the Deputy Director of Planning and Local Assistance for Caltrans District 12. Lan is responsible for regional planning, system planning, community planning, IGR local development review, freight mobility, corridor management, advanced planning project studies, managed lane studies, and local assistance. It's a lot. Lan holds 2 master's degrees in both urban planning and civil engineering and is both a certified planner and engineer. Well, thank you 3 very much for being here today. And after that first panel, I bet you're real excited. Well, I have a question actually for all 3 of you, and you can go in any order you'd like. Please briefly explain what your role, your agency's role is and plays in regional transportation planning, and talk about how your agency will review the 18 ideas that were submitted by the public over the past year.
I can start. TCA's role is, as a regional transportation agency, is to enhance mobility in Orange County as well as Southern California. And we work with our transportation partners, Caltrans and OCTA, as well as the local cities in the County of Orange, to complement all of their projects. Obviously, we have lots of roadways in our county and freeways and a lot of other projects. And TCA, again, works with our partners to make the best of our communities and make our ability to get home in the evening or get to work in the morning as easy as possible. And we provide a choice for you residents every day. You can opt in to take the toll road and make sure you can get to work, within 20 minutes or however long you need to get to work. Or you can take the freeway, but every day we provide you a choice, and you can use that option at your decision point. As far as our role in the 18 ideas that have been submitted to date by the public, we'll take all those ideas and we'll evaluate them for their feasibility. We'll look at whether or not they provide traffic relief. We'll look at air quality, how many of these options actually help our community in reducing air pollution. Which ones provide the least impacts to biological resources. TCA does have 51 miles of roadway, but we also have over 2,000 acres of open space. So we have been able to show that you can build facilities and also be environmentally sensitive. As you heard earlier today, we do have another $28 million that would go towards environmental projects. So we will look at all those issues, all those topics with these 18 ideas and choose the best one that provides the most benefits at the least impacts.
Thank you. Greg, how about you?
Yeah, OCTA looks at the transportation system from a whole county-wide perspective and looking at all the modes. And every 4 years we develop a long-range transportation plan that looks at the transportation needs throughout the county and looks out about 25 years or so. And in developing that plan, we work with our partner agencies throughout the counties, including the cities, Caltrans, TCA, and try to identify a project list that addresses those needs. And that really serves as our input into the regional transportation plan that's developed by the Southern California Association of Governments. In this process, we're hoping to play an important role in participating with the outcomes of the process. Sorry. Yeah, we're just hoping to play an important role in the process and coordinate closely with all the stakeholder agencies that are involved.
Thank you. And Lan?
First of all, on behalf of the State Department of Transportation, we sincerely appreciate your participation. I'm also very happy to be given this opportunity to hear from the community, hear from you. And as Caltrans plays a very critical role in the regional transportation planning. And from my perspective, I see several levels. First of all, under the California state law, and our department is charged to develop a statewide transition plan and to reflect the statewide policies and priorities. And we also write regional transportation planning guidelines for CTC, California California Transportation Commission. So once the guidelines is approved, and all regional transportation planning agencies need to follow. And also, as our district, we work very closely with SCAG, it's Southern California Association of Government, and with their RTP development process, and make sure the regional transition plan reflects state priorities and policies. And we also locally work with OCTA. When they develop their long-range transition plan, we want to make sure we review and comment, provide input, make sure consistent with the statewide transition plan and the regional plan, and our department's mission and priorities is well reflected in their plan. And lastly, but also most important, we work with all elected officials and County of Orange and all the local like a city government and all the publics, and to make sure we implement and take actions to implement what's being approved in those approved plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, Valerie, what kind of technical exercises are each of these ideas put through in a project initiation document process, otherwise known as a PID?
Yes. They're taken through many analytical processes, and if we could put the slide up that shows the 18 ideas to get the public. So as you see, the 18 ideas on the slide, they were all presented to us through the past 2 public forum meetings. So we'll take all of these ideas and look at stormwater, how much of these stormwater will be produced by these different ideas. We'll look at traffic relief, which one provides the most traffic relief to our community. Again, we'll look at air quality. We'll look at biological resources, which ones have the least impacts on biological resources, whether it be gnatcatchers, toads, owls, all the different biological species. We'll also look at other BMPs, right-of-way impacts. We'll also look at costs. So we take the whole spectrum of technical reports, and we do a high-level review of each of these through the PID phase, and then we go into the environmental impact report, the next phase. We take them through more detailed technical studies, which is a multi-year process. But each of these 18 ideas will be evaluated against each other and completed through the PID process.
And then how is the public's participation in that PID or PID process?
Through the PID process, typically it's done at the agency level. It's very rare that we're out in the public at this early stage. Typically, a project through a project sponsor is developed, purpose and need is identified, and different alternatives are analyzed internally. And not until the PID phase is done does the public really get involved. But again, this is a very unique process. We've been to the public now, this is our 3rd time, and we've solicited input from the public. And so we're taking this opportunity to get the public involved at this early stage to get their feedback, their concerns, what they value the most, and what they want to see as potential options for moving forward.
Okay. Greg, are any of these 18 ideas already covered by OCTA's long-range transportation plan?
Yes, a handful of the ideas up here are already included in the long-range plan. We have the build-out of the master plan of arterial highways, the signal synchronization network, the District 5 bikeways, the Ortega widening, as well as the extension of the carpool lane from Pico down to the San Diego County line. And finally, the 241 connection to I-5 is included in the plan as well. There's no specific alternative identified in the plan. It's just the conceptual.
Well, that's a. Did you write down that question? We'll get. Anyway, Greg, anything else on that, or?
No,
that
those,
good?
those are the projects that
All
are
right.
included in the LRTP at this time.
All right, thank you. Lan, what role does Caltrans play during the vetting of all these ideas that they spoke about?
Okay, usually those ideas start from, usually the planning, those ideas come from, system planning, regional planning, community participation, and gather those ideas. Once those ideas been gathered, then we start to, we call PID-PDS, stands for Project Study Report and Project Development Support. So what this is a first step and kind of to look at what this study, this phase of the project development really try to do a couple of things. One is to develop a well-defined purpose and a need statement. So it's the need is to identify the system deficiency and kind of identify what the problem is. And then the purpose is what the objectives, what we try to accomplish together. So if that's a key foundation of the entire process. And so if to make it more easier to relate it to everybody in the audience, I would use a kind of analogy for this. If you need to go to your child's wedding, so then you look at your closet, you don't have a beautiful dress and for the wedding. That is the need. You need a pretty and a nice, presentable dress. That's the need. Then you are saying, okay, and what the objective, what's the purpose of doing this? Go shopping, everyone will get ideas or try different dresses. The purpose is I want to make the wedding, make myself very presentable, and then make my child proud of me, then give my child a most memorable and beautiful wedding day. That is the purpose. So I think that's the kind of give you kind of some idea. That's about the major project like this, we try to do something similar. Identify what the needs, the deficiencies is, then what we try to accomplish together. That's one thing we need to work through this process and to define that. Second thing, we try to in the process to do what the scope of the project, the cost of the project, the schedule, how long take to deliver the project like this. And then, then what's the potential risks are. So I think that's this preliminary study, it's an engineering report. It is a technical report. That is the issues we try to resolve during this process.
So Valerie, you talked earlier about the 18 areas and the PIDs and going over it. How does Caltrans and OCTA participate in that particular part of the process while you're going through that analysis?
There are project partners, and obviously Caltrans is the state owner of the state highway system. They're also the designated lead for the federal environmental process. So they're our partner throughout the development of the project and throughout the environmental process. OCTA is the County Transportation Commission. So all projects that are developed in the county are ultimately provided to OCTA, who then in turn provides our county's project information up to SCAG, the Southern California Association of Governments. And SCAG captures all of the regions, LA region's projects. So if they look at, as Lan was saying earlier, the transportation needs for Southern California, what our air quality requirements are. So they model every project. And similar to what SCAG does for all of LA region, OCTA does that for Orange County. And so again, working with both of our transportation partners, we make sure that they're all up to speed on what is being studied so they can capture it in their modeling and also make sure that it complies with any projects they're looking at for statewide purposes or for the county.
Okay. Greg, my understanding is there's a long-range transportation plan update coming.
Right.
And so what is the timeline for that, and will the public get an opportunity to weigh in?
Yeah, we actually kicked off the plan earlier this year. We've started engaging with the local jurisdictions primarily, elected officials and planning directors from throughout Orange County. And then this summer we're going to be putting a survey online that's available to the public. And we'll be bringing in input that way while we're developing some of the scenarios that will go into the plan. And then by spring 2018, we'll have a draft plan available for public review, and I'm sure there'll be an open house or two along the way as well.
So you say open house, so before that it's just going to be a survey?
Right now it's a survey.
Okay.
There'll probably be other opportunities as well.
Okay.
And so just keep an eye on our website. We'll be posting additional information on outreach.
Yeah, will something be notified of the community? Would you be sending something out, or?
Yeah, there'll be notifications on especially when the draft plan is being released. It's usually notified, sent out through mailers, and I think we do some newspaper listings as well. So there's a number of ways we get the word out.
Okay. Valerie, actually, I think it's for all three of you again. Will we be able to have an opportunity to recommend other traffic congestion relief ideas?
Yes, the public will have a continued opportunity to weigh in. In fact, if we could put up the slide of the process, I think it's really helpful, and hopefully all of you can see it in the audience. We have a slide that shows the multi-year steps. So this slide here illustrates where we've been and where we are right now, which is the project initiation phase. Each of the asterisks that are listed on the boxes above is when the public will have an opportunity to participate. Right now, because we're at the early stages and we've received 18 ideas from the public, we do welcome your ideas. If you have suggestions as far as revisions to existing ideas or new projects that you want us to evaluate, we welcome those opportunities to look at them. We do use existing information, whether it's from prior studies that TCA's conducted or Caltrans or OCTA, but we welcome continued feedback. But as you see on the slide, it's a multi-year process. The PID phase won't be completed until probably beginning of next year, and then we're in 2 years of technical studies. But throughout the process, you will have a chance to weigh in and provide additional comments.
So when you say throughout the process, actually every box will say, is there a part for public input?
The ones with the asterisks, so
which is every box.
Exactly. So when the draft is released, right now we're anticipating in 2020, and that will be circulated for public comment and review. But even prior to that, we'll have a formal scoping meeting with the public, and that's where you can come and present your ideas. You can look at what we've done to date and see whether or not you, again, want to make modifications or make new additions to that. So we'll definitely keep everyone engaged, and we have information on our website with our transportation partners. So we're trying to get as much information out to the public and vice versa, get that back from them.
Great. Lan, since both TCA and OCTA have potential projects that could impact the I-5 from Pico to the county line, what coordination efforts need to take place?
Caltrans is the owner and operator of the state highway system. And by saying that, that's under state law. And that means we have the ultimate responsibility for operations, maintenance, and tort liability for state highway system. And with the limited transportation funding, and we absolutely always welcome any our stakeholders and partners transportation and in the transportation industry, and can bring the transportation solutions and the funding options, anything to the table to help us expand or enhance the transportation system for everybody in the region. And so that's why we are really excited to work both agencies, OCTA and the TCA. And so for OCTA, they're having this add HOV lanes on I-5 to the county line. And TCA is looking at all those 18 ideas to try to reduce congestion and enhance mobility for the South Orange County. So we definitely very much welcome to bring those ideas and concepts and look at and then work together. So since we have those there, doesn't matter OCTA and the TCA, they all follow Caltrans, like procedure and guidelines and practice. So we review and comment on the stuff, so make sure some consistency. So if we see any major discrepancy, and we make sure the that continue the communication, those triangles, three organizations, we make sure we communicate very well about assumptions, methodologies, lots of, from technical policy level and from leadership level, we keep the communication going because ultimately, even we are different agencies, we all for the same shared mission to improve safety, mobility, and sustainability for the people in Orange County. There's no difference there. So I think that's our common goal.
Thank you. Well, folks, we're going to move over to your questions now. And once again, the blue pouches are this room, the clear are for online, and the red are for the overflow room. And again, the cards are there, and feel free to ask more questions. First question is, how do you evaluate traffic congestion when there has been massive freeway construction from San Clemente to Mission Viejo for the past 2 to 3 years? Doesn't seem that your modeling will be accurate.
So there has been a lot of construction in South Orange County. I've seen it, all of you have seen it, and you drive it every day. Luckily, there's a lot of information out there from prior years, prior to the construction. But also, because this is such a lengthy process, again, we're going to be doing technical studies for over 2 years. So we'll continue to refine the information. We'll be using new models that OCTA is working on. We'll verify those with the Southern California Association of Governments. So because it's a multi-year process and we're able to use existing information, we'll be sure to fine-tune and get the most accurate traffic information that's out there.
Okay, I want to add a little bit on that because it sounds like somebody really concerned about the accuracy of the data. So when we look at the future demand in the system, we really do not need to worry about the construction activities. So when we gather the data, we want to make sure those data is representative, not the off-school season. We do not collect the data during the Thanksgiving weekend, the Memorial weekend, or when school is not in session. So we have a procedure to decide when is the right data, definitely not during the construction period either. So then also when we look at the future demand, the long-range transportation plan will really be driven by population growth and job growth. So it's not, you don't need to worry about it, because I have lots of construction in my neighborhood, then inflated the congestion or delay. So that's not the case here.
So next question is, will Los Patrones be part of the toll road system?
Los Patrones, that is a possibility. We are working with the county. That is an option. It's being designed to state highway standards. So it is potential, but again, it's something that will have to be evaluated.
What is that? We don't know what that is. What do you say?
The question was whether or not Los Patrones would be. Los Patrones is the new facility, the new transportation corridor that's being constructed from Oso Parkway down to Cow Camp Road, up by Tesoro High School.
Free road. The free road, right?
Free.
There is a chance that road would become part of the toll road system. Again, it's being designed to state highway standards. And so we are working in parallel, and that is a potential that would be consistent with the other portions of the toll road.
Okay. Once again, folks, if you have more questions, sounds like you might, please fill out the cards. All right. Do all panelists have stated that they welcome public input? If the majority of the voters in any city vote against an alignment, can it be stopped?
As far as whether or not voters can stop an alignment, that definitely goes into the record, but also what makes a decision is the resource agencies. They play a critical role in permitting a project, and if there's a lot of controversy for a specific alignment, obviously they are not as prone to providing a permit for a project. For example, the 241 green alignment that we rescinded and settled with, we weren't able to get a permit from the California Coastal Commission because of the opposition to that project and the impacts to coastal resources. So we do take the public's input and obviously the resource agencies, but all of that is reflected in when the TCA Board of Directors or Caltrans makes an ultimate decision on whether or not a project should move forward.
Okay. I think, hey folks, let's listen to some of these other questions. Can you please fill out a card, somebody? Please, with the question. Another?
So if the project goes to the voters as an initiative, then yes, that is a possibility, but right now it's not an initiative before the voters. But again, your input does come before our board, and they take that into consideration before approving any project. But right now, the project's not up for a yes or no vote. We're just looking at all the data. We're not moving forward with a project. Again, we have 18 ideas that are in front of us, in front of Caltrans, in front of all of you. If you have other suggestions, please bring them to us. We're here to get your input. We're not here.
All right. All right, here's another question, and I think it's more about process. But it says, why does San Clemente get only one vote for a decision that impacts its own city?
As far as one vote, I would think maybe you're referencing your city council person that sits on our board. But again, each of you have a voice. Each of you can weigh in on the process. So we're here today, again, we're here earlier in the process because we value your feedback. So each of you have a voice, so it's not just one vote. All of you get to weigh in on this. And I welcome your comments. That is part of the process, and you will continue to be updated, and you can provide input throughout the way.
Here's an idea for a question. Has any consideration been given to double-decking the I-5?
I don't think double-decking the I-5 has been taken into consideration to date.
What idea? All righty.
If I may.
Be expensive.
Well, no, I mean, if that's something that seriously is being suggested by you as the community, I mean, submit that to us, and we will put that through the rigor of reports and analyses that we are with the other ones. That's the kind of feedback we're looking at. If that's something the community wants, I mean, you have to understand that obviously there may be visual impacts, but if that's something that the community wants, that's the type of analysis we'll do. So we, again, get that input to us.
Right. Now this next one, you know, for future reference more than tonight, but why did you invite close to 100,000 households but only had seats for a few hundred? And I don't know if you can answer that. Maybe it's a practical question of, to be honest, folks, this was the largest facility we have, and for now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's maybe other avenues.
We will, again, take that into consideration if we have, when I have our next forum. But our two prior forums, we had the first one, I think we had a little over 100 people. The second one, maybe 150 people. So it was just from gauging the prior forums, we thought we accommodated more than enough interest. But again, we're broadcasting this on the internet. We're recording it so the public can continue to weigh in. But obviously, there's a lot of interest, and I think that's fantastic. All of you are interested in the process, and if there is another opportunity, we will take that in consideration and have a venue to accommodate all of the people.
So next question is about option number 15. Is that still a viable option after the settlement? It does not affect existing homes versus option 9. It only affects wildlife.
So option 15, if we can go to the avoidance map, I think that will be helpful as well. So again, option 15 is within the hatched area of the graphic, and so that's not something that TCA could fund or construct. It's part of the settlement agreement that the agency reached with the Safe San Onofre Coalition in 2016.
Next question is there really... They want to see.
The 18 ideas, again, they were submitted by the public through our last 2 public forums. So all these ideas, they will be evaluated. So even though the alignments that are in the avoidance area, we will evaluate their technical feasibility. And if an alignment, again, there were alignments that were suggested by the public that attended the past 2 forum meetings.
Okay. This is similar to the last question, but is there really any realistic likelihood that you will pursue an environmental impact report for routes 18 and 9?
So we can go to, so 18 and 9. So 18 is the Beltway. 9 is the La Plata variation down. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the Beltway short. So those were 2 alternatives that were recommended, again, through the public forum process. But it is possible that they will make it into the state and federal environmental process. Again, we're doing the project initiation document to look at whether or not they provide congestion relief, minimize environmental impacts. And at the end of that process, we will move those remaining alternatives through the EIR, EIS. And we will provide that to you, the public, to see that information. But there is a chance that that idea will move forward if it meets the purpose and need for the project and all those other technical areas that we talked about earlier tonight.
Well, this question I actually would like to hear from OCTA and Caltrans, and then if you need to, Valerie can answer. And it does say, why is TCA driving non-toll initiatives? How can a toll agency objectively evaluate non-toll options? So how does OCTA and Caltrans involve these?
Well, through the process, I think they're just looking at all available options at this point. And like Valerie was saying, there were 2 public forums before where they were just taking input. And so they've taken the public's input, looking at all the options at this point, and proceeding into the evaluation process.
Caltrans, do you want to answer that?
Yeah.
It's, wow, that's honestly this question. Do you want to answer first on that last question? And then we'll get to your question, which is right here. We'll do that. We're talking about the first question then. Do you want to answer on that other one?
Yeah, so I just,
It's the original question we had before about why is the TCA driving non-toll options. We're still on that question. Okay, we'll get back to this question.
yeah, I think because all those ideas were gathered by through TCA's public outreach, so I think legally, and if the ideas, and we have to go through all the ideas and go through the project delivery process, so it need to be evaluated. And somebody just worried about we're wasting public fund or tax dollars money to evaluate green alignment. And then, but legally we still have to put, another reason is that green alignment has been approved, RTP, SCAG's RTP. You know, before this legal settlement, because SCAG's RTP is every 4 years. So 4 years ago, so without this legal settlement, there was the alignment in the approved RTP, Regional Transition Plan. So we cannot just remove it. And then, but we wouldn't waste lots of money. Then you can, in the document itself, you can just say, because of the legal agreement, this will fall into the avoidance area, then we will not do lots of waste money to do any technical, all those, impact studies or detailed studies. Just, that's the process.
Thank you. Now going to the questions here, it says, first of all, this says, how do we get some of these options off the table? But likewise, why are some of the options of the 18 and others still up here if they're not seriously going to be considered?
Well, again, because the public has submitted all 18 ideas, we have to evaluate them equally right now before we start to remove the ideas. And once we get through the project initiation phase and we get into the state CEQA and federal NEPA phase, we will continue to take the remaining ideas and do very detailed technical studies. But all the ideas right now will be taken through the, again, the project initiation phase. So all of them are up there because those are the ones that have been submitted to date by the public, and we want to be responsive to those suggestions and take a look at them and say whether or not they reduce congestion in our area.
All right. Folks, please, it's very hard to listen when we have 20 people talking at the same time. We've got a lot of people here that ask questions. Please, if you have additional questions, raise your hand and get a card and bring it up, okay? Rather than yelling it. But then we'll have to repeat the question. But can you write it down, please? It's very hard, and it's not fair to the other people as well, okay? You have hands over here, folks. Can you get them a card? All right. Here's a question. What percentage of OC commuters currently use the existing toll roads?
Currently, we have over 300,000 transactions per day. So there's that many more vehicles that are off of our freeway system. So we have TCA's toll facilities make up over 20% of the county highway system. So the So the transactions and the toll usage varies every day based on what you drivers choose to take. The roads are not. So they take over 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, depending on the segment of the facility. Is the ridership is dependent on where the drivers are going to. But in the project that's moving forward, the ideas, the 18 ideas, we will evaluate how many users will use the roadways, and we will have that information available, and that will be part of the decision-making process as whether or not a solution is viable.
This is a question from, we only have a few questions or time left. This is from somebody online. How is the best way to get our voices heard? Again, telling us how.
Just please submit your comments. Submit your information, whether or not you oppose the 18 ideas, whether you want a different idea. A gentleman recommended double decking. We had not looked at that previously. I don't think it has been studied. But if you have a variation of one of the ideas up, let us know. Obviously, we've heard your comments about specific alignments that you're not in favor of, but submit your comments. There is information on the flyer that went out to all of you. You can submit your comments online, and we will have that as part of the record.
In the last panel, they said Camp Pendleton was off limits. Please provide, I guess, proof that you even tried.
During the California Coastal Commission hearing in 2008, Camp Pendleton actually sent a letter and distributed it that they would not allow any alignment, any other alignment than the green alignment. They want to restrict any project, any road option until their most northern boundary, which again was where the prior alignment was. They will not entertain any other options because it impacts their ability to train, and they provide an important function and mission for us, and anything other than where the green alignment was is not allowable, and they have provided that in writing to the public and to TCA.
How about going behind Pendleton? Yeah. That's around it.
And those are ideas and comments. Please bring them forward, folks. What is, question is, and I believe this is a company, what is SOMA's role currently with TCA in the toll roads?
SOMAS is performing biological surveys for us. So they're out in all of the alignments that go through undeveloped open space areas because we have existing data for the 18 ideas. But for areas where there isn't prior information, we have SOMAS out there doing surveys. So when we come to our board with a recommended number of alternatives that we want to move forward into the EIR, EIS, we understand and our board understands what the potential impacts are. You know, if there's listed species, if there's protected species, we understand that going in because that has a level of risk associated with that and whether or not you'd be able to get a permit. So we're being proactive and we have our biologists out there now collecting that data.
Okay. And this person says, toll roads cost money. How will you make sure toll roads are used and not sit empty?
All the pricing that goes in play is based on demand. So the more demand we have, we set the pricing to lessen the congestion because again, the benefit the toll roads provide is a congested-free alternative to the freeway system. So if there's less congestion on the freeway, then obviously we don't have as many users on the toll road system and the price will reflect that. It's supply and demand. If you have more demand for the system, then the price will reflect that. It's all market driven.
Okay. How long do stakeholders have to submit other options beyond the current 18?
If we go back to the slide about the process, the number of steps is a multi-year process. So all the way up until right now, the schedule shows 2020 for releasing the draft environmental document. So you have an opportunity to weigh in up until that point as far as looking at different ideas. But beginning of next year, we're planning to have a formal scoping meeting where again, you, the public, can come and suggest ideas that you haven't yet to date. And we will put that into the process and look at whether or not they provide traffic relief. But again, it's a multi-step, multi-year process, and the public has to stay engaged the whole time. That is required of state and federal rules and laws. And again, TCA as a public agency is required to have you, the public, involved in that process.
You might want to put the chart up with the 18 options. Which of the 18 routes are not possible due to the settlement, such as option number 15?
So the ideas, and actually if we could put the other graphic that shows the 18 ideas, probably more.
The map.
The map of the 18 ideas.
That one?
Yeah.
It's hard to see.
It's hard to see. So it's number 8. Number 8 and number 15, the green alignment, those are not permittable by TCA as part of the settlement agreement. But everything to the west of that is an option. So it's the eastern portion of Rancho Mission Viejo that TCA cannot build any alignment in.
So Camp Pendleton, this is alignment 15, and the environmental your settlement sold us out. Correct. Because that was the best alignment possible that was providing all of us. So shame on you. We don't want any
Okay, folks, we have another Camp Pendleton question. Why didn't we all ask the government to let the road go to Camp Pendleton? That's another Camp Pendleton question.
Ask the government. We went to California Coastal Commission. They denied our permit application. We went before the State Water Resources Control Board to get a permit from the state of California. They denied the issuance of our permit. So we did go to the government. We went to the state government. Camp Pendleton put on record what alignment they would accept. We did look at other options that went through Camp Pendleton, but that wasn't viable. Again, Camp Pendleton, their mission is to train the Marines, prepare them to serve the American public, and they have to preserve that ability. And any alignment that cuts through their base prevents their ability to train. So they will only accept the northernmost alignment, and we are not allowed to build a facility there.
Here's a question. If the Beltway, number 9 and number 18, is removed from consideration now, will it ever be considered again as a possible traffic mitigation option in the future? Maybe the other two might want to answer that.
I think right now the Beltway, just like any other 18 ideas, they equally will be evaluated. So I think it's still premature to say we will use it as a supplemental or traffic impact mitigation measure at this point. So we haven't eliminated any option yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, yeah, it's premature to say whether or not they'll be eliminated. However, if there's a transportation need in the future, we go through similar processes such as this to identify the appropriate solutions. So.
When he's looking for next question, I just want to say, I understand like any major improvement project always come with a major opposition. So, and so this is okay, yeah. So. Yeah, I think it's as all three agencies, and then with support from the elected officials, they all encourage, all would like to hear from the community. I just let you know, based on our department, the project delivery procedure, we do not go to public at this technical engineering stage phase. And then this is, usually the official public input phase start with the environmental, and we call PAED, project approval, and the environmental assessment, impact assessment phase. So really, like we are going above and beyond. Really, very, I understand the audience still very. I talk with a very academic, very neutral, and as a procedure, how we deliver all those projects, big or small, we follow the same procedure. So I think, that's maybe, it's a nicer piece of information you would like to hear from a third party. So it is really, we invite all of you start extremely early. It's early. It's not required, but we are not, even not required, and Ryan told me the same thing, even not required, we would like to step out to go to hear from the community. Yeah.
Okay, we only have a couple minutes left. So will the ideas presented today for alternate routes for the 241 to I-5 be added to the current 19?
The 18 ideas right now, if there's potential, I guess, double decking. But yeah, if you want to submit ideas, again, I invite you to do that. There's a website, getmovingOC.com. You can submit your ideas. We welcome your input and your feedback on the 18 ideas that exist today. If you have feasible ideas, again, on modifications to those, if you want to see other improvements, we welcome that, and we will include that in our information that we're preparing. And if it's a viable solution that, again, reduces impacts to the environment, provides congestion relief, then that's something that we will move forward into the state and federal process. Again, we have to evaluate all the alternatives equally, and that's what we're trying to do through this process.
Do you know how many trips would alignment 14 to I-5 take away from the I-5 during peak hours?
And that's the type of information that we're going to be preparing as part of this study. We'll be updating the traffic studies and be looking at the number of cars that a specific alignment may or may not use, and that will go into the decision process whether or not an alignment is moved forward. Because again, it has to be a viable alternative that reduces congestion and takes traffic off your streets and takes traffic off the I-5 freeway.
All right, one more. I was told I could do one more. I pushed. How has the positive impact of I-5 expansion and improvements been accounted for in the 241 extension?
That information, again, when that project is wrapping up, I think fairly soon, we will take that into account in our traffic studies and the technical reports. And those, again, will be conducted over the next couple of years. So we'll use that information along with the traffic model, and all that will be put through the process to evaluate which options perform the best.
Okay, thank you. Well, I want to thank you three very much for being here tonight. And folks, at least give them a round of applause for being here. We want to thank all of you for your participation. I want to thank you for including Saddleback College in this process. We are your community college, and we're here to facilitate matters such as this. We are here to, in the future, to help that. And I'm going to bring up Jennifer Fitzgerald. There it goes.
Thank you so much for participating with us tonight here at Saddleback College campus and also online. I want to encourage you for the next hour. We'll have video set up if you have comments you want to put on the record through video. We also have a court reporter outside who will also be here for another hour if you'd like to dictate your comments to the court reporter, so those are part of the public record. We also have comment boxes as you leave, and we encourage you to give your comments that way. And I also wanted to say thank you to Sophia Liang, who is our illustrator this evening. You'll all be receiving these illustrations that she's created on the getmovingoc.com website. And I'll just encourage you again, go to the getmovingoc.com website to continue to participate. Thank you so much.